brings me to part 2. This is where we go day to day, most of the days, not all the days, when things are happening. And I try to record them. And so we start with Saturday the 1st of July of this year. Europe and America are rapidly invaded by sexual sin, and churches are celebrating homosexuality. Unbelievable. I want you to go ahead and watch this video that I'm about to show you right now.
Over the past few years, something has been happening in the churches, something that needs to be addressed. There's been a rise in great compromise and the ways of the world. The ways of sin are slowly being accepted in the very place that is supposed to be doing the opposite. We now see churches that embrace idolatry.
At Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, California, hundreds of folks are going to come here to witness the Beyonce Mass, bringing together secular music and a religious message to tell a story of empowerment for particularly women of color, but for anyone who happens to sing praises to the goddess herself, Beyonce.
Homosexuality, sexual perversions, you name it, all those sins across the board that God is against are invited in these churches. The number of these churches that are pro-sin and not pro the gospel are increasing in number.
There's even a denomination called the Metropolitan Community Churches. At one time there were 110 of them. It's a homosexual denomination. And the leader, the guy that started it, a man named Troy Perry. I know Troy Perry. Some years ago, I was invited by a national magazine to do an interview and a debate with Troy Perry. We went to an office building down in the Los Angeles area. And I was there to confront him and to discuss the idea of whether or not you could be a Christian and a practicing advocate of homosexuality as he is. We got into the room. It was a very heated kind of environment, you can imagine. And we sat across from each other, and he started to talk about being a devoted homosexual to one person that he loved, that God had brought in his life, and he was talking about the fact that you could be a holy homosexual in that sense, that you could be a Christian, and he was parading himself as if he was some pure person. And before he went, I made sure that he heard the message of repentance.
I mean, at this point, there's no shortage of churches that affirm the sin of homosexuality instead of calling those.
Can you believe it? That's happening, and it's happening not just in America, but around the world. Let's go to Sunday the 2nd of July. France is out of control. Every dot represents a major point of rioting, mainly Muslims in rebellion against the police. Houses are being burned down and cars destroyed. It is just unbelievable. Monday the 3rd of July. Can you guess who is part of this presentation? Israeli Prime Minister is a religious Jew. I want you to go ahead and watch this.
את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו מגבול הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים, מן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה, ביבשה, באוויר ובים, את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל.
Tuesday, the 4th of July. Unprecedented number of European Jews are interested in migrating to Israel. Many are coming because of persecution in many different countries of the world. God told us that will happen. Quote, He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth. And that's Isaiah 11:12. It's happening in our lifetime. Wednesday, the 5th of July, the Muslim riots made it to Switzerland. A train was set on fire in Zurich. I was there. I was taking a train to Zurich just a few months ago. And now the train there is burning. Thursday, the 6th of July. The probability of a war with Hezbollah in the immediate future is the highest since 2006, when a miscalculation of their leader led to the Second Lebanon War. For over a decade, the Lebanese terror organization was deterred. However, Nasrallah has been testing Israel ever since the day of the weak government of change. He is sure that if there is a time for a war, it's now. Israel is suffering from an inner political crisis, and Lebanon is in such a bad condition that only a war can help. This is by Amir Tsarfati. Those were his words. So he expects a war in the Middle East with Hezbollah. That's the party of Allah in the near future. It could happen. Friday, the 7th of July. 15-minute cities. What does that mean? How government controls is infiltrating the world. I want you to watch that and see what's happening. And it's already implemented in certain parts of the world.
C40 cities. C40 cities are a global network of mayors of the world's leading cities, and these mayors are uniting in confronting climate change, so they say. There are 96 member cities, including 14 here in America, and these 96 cities account for more than 20% of the global economy. These mayors of these cities, they plan to pass laws and offer incentives to have their plans accepted and implemented. One can look at Oxfordshire, England as an example. See, Oxford is a city in England. It's in the county of Oxfordshire. It's one of those 96 members of the C40 cities. Now, I chose Oxfordshire as an example because they have a detailed website which is available to anyone who wants to understand this whole concept better. The structure of a C40 city, which is also called a 15-minute city, the concept here is that filters will be put in place around the city to keep people within a 15-minute radius of their residence. In their FAQ section on the council's website, it is explained how traffic filters work. Basically, these filters will not be a physical road closure. They will be enforced by cameras, automatic number plate readers. Unauthorized vehicles will go through these traffic filters and they'll be identified. So any car that goes through these filters but is not exempt will be issued a fine. It was proposed that residents of Oxfordshire County be issued 25 day passes per vehicle per year, with a maximum of 1 car per person and 2 vehicles per household. Residents in the Oxford City area, which will be most affected by this, will receive a maximum of 100 day passes per vehicle per year. Now, Oxfordshire County opened up this plan for public comments. The council received over 5,700 comments, and 93% of the people were opposed to traffic filters, meaning only 7% supported them. But yet, in November of 2022, the council approved £6.5 million for 6 traffic filters. At the time, £6.5 million was equal to $8.3 million.
And it will get worse. The digital mark is coming. I want you to watch this next segment.
The World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization, they both have very boldly and publicly stated their plans. They're not hiding anything. In 2016, the World Economic Forum, the Public Relations Department released a video called 8 Predictions for the World in 2030. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, this is how the world will be transformed as part of Agenda 2030. And the New World Order, this is how it's going to come together. The 8 predictions are this. Number 1, you're going to own nothing and you'll be happy about it. Instead, you're going to rent everything. And everything you rent, it's going to be delivered to you right to your front door by drones. Number 2, the U.S. won't be the world leading superpower. Instead, a handful of countries will dominate together. Number 3, you won't die waiting for an organ donor. Custom organs will be 3D printed on demand, but only if your social credit score is high enough. Number 4, you're going to eat much less meat. Meat will be an occasional treat, not a staple. This is for the good, of course, of the environment and our health. In other words, meat will become so rare and expensive that only the rich will be able to afford it. Number 5, 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. And as a result, countries must prepare to welcome more refugees. By welcoming more refugees, what they really mean is that we need to eliminate borders. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. To have fossil fuels, there's going to be a price on carbon. Number 7, get ready for this because you could be on your way to Mars. And number 8, Western values will be tested to the breaking point. This means Western culture and values will be slowly coming extinct. Well, that's quite a list. Is there a connecting link to all of these initiatives? Yeah, there is. It's the digital ID. The digital ID will be the key to making all of this coexist. Understand the digital ID, in order to have health care, in order to even have access to insurance and to have access to doctors, you have to have a digital ID. Financially, to open a bank account, just to open one, you have to have a digital ID. It will affect food purchases, and farmers will be affected by it. If you want to travel, you will not be able to book trips or go through border control at other countries unless you have a digital ID. E-commerce, shopping. You can't shop online without a digital ID. Social platforms, they will be all over your social platforms. The government, you will not be able to use government services. Folks, that's like utilities, unless you have a digital ID. Telecommunications, you won't be able to use or even own a cell phone unless you have a digital ID. So what is the connecting point here? Healthcare, banking, food, travel, shopping, social platforms, government usage of services and utilities, telephones, cell phones, all these things come together.
Amazing, isn't it? Sunday the 9th of July. Miss Netherlands of 2023, and the winner is a male. Compare that to the runner-up, a female. What is wrong with people? What is wrong with the world? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. Satan has blinded their minds. That's what's wrong with it. Monday the 10th of July. At Michigan's Wayne State University, Professor Stephen Shapiro posted the following on social media. With regard to conservative speakers coming to his campus, quote, "I think it is far more admirable to kill a racist, homophobic, or transphobic speaker than it is to shout them down." What? Unbelievable. And apparently he's still there. Jocelyn Berry, as press secretary for Democratic Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, which overwhelming evidence proves the election was stolen from Republican Kari Lake, as you remember that, posted a meme unabashedly calling for violence against transphobes. And that's a code name for Christians. That's us. And there is going to be a violence promised. Oh, that's great. Here in Christian America. Sign of the end time, isn't it? Tuesday the 11th of July. Texas Heartbeat Act has saved nearly 10,000 babies from abortion. New study estimates since September of 2021. The Texas Heartbeat Act has protected unborn children from abortion after the heartbeat can be detected as early as 6 weeks of gestation. That's good news. At least one slide in here, that's good news. But it shows us how much of that is an exception, because most states do not have that law and babies are being slaughtered. Wednesday, the 12th of July. NHS receives 26.68 million budget to roll out AI and automation technologies in British healthcare system that makes it easier to what? To track down people. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, backed by the Conservative Party, believes these reforms will make the NHS fit for the future. Oh, so to be tracked down is going to be a good thing, that everybody knows everything about us? I don't think so. Let's go on to Thursday the 13th. The boycott, divestment and sanctions, also known as BDS, campaign against Israel claims to be a peaceful movement that seeks justice for the Palestinians through non-violent means. But in reality, the movement is far from peaceful and has no intention of supporting any peace agreement. And that is the truth. And I want you to see this short clip.
Let me read. Omar Barghouti is one of the co-founders of the movement. His quote, "No Palestinian, rational Palestinian, not a sellout Palestinian, will ever accept a Jewish state in Palestine."
إذا عاد اللاجئون إلى ديارهم كما تطالب وتناضل حركة المقاطعة، ماذا تبقى من النظام الصهيوني القائم؟ لن تبقى دولة صهيونية نتحدث عنها، وستصبح الأقلية الفلسطينية أغلبية فلسطينية في الدولة المسماة حاليا إسرائيل.
Friday the 14th of July. For the first time at the Western Wall, a 2,000-year visit in augmented reality. For the first time ever, you can now visit the Western Wall and see both physical reality and virtual reality alongside each other. In one glance, capture the majesty and holiness of this place and experience 2,000 years of Jewish history. It's talking about the Western Wall and what it looked like back in the days of Jesus. And notice this tiny yellow brownish piece of wall. That's the existing wall of today, the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall as it's called. And all the rest, which was huge, was there in the time of Jesus and of course is not there today. Saturday the 15th of July 2023. Under a shocking new plan that is scheduled to be adopted 2 months before the US presidential election in 2024. All it would take is some sort of a major global shock for the United Nations to literally take authority of the entire planet. In other words, there is a plan out there right now to take over the world, and all they need is some global shock, something that happens, and boom, the world can easily be taken over. Doesn't that sound exactly what Antichrist is going to do? What's that shock going to be? Oh, how about the rapture? When that occurs, that will be the shock of shocks. And after that, the world will become under the authority of Antichrist. Monday the 17th of July 2023. US officials have issued a tsunami warning for Alaska after the state's southwestern coast was rocked by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake. Huge, but fortunately it was down in the ocean far enough, and this tsunami, never really much of that happened. So again, they were blessed that they escaped that. Wednesday the 19th of July. Ukrainian suicide boat exploded under the Crimea Bridge and caused the collapse of part of the bridge as well as civilian casualties. Putin has summoned his Security Council to discuss possible ways of retaliation. So again, the explosion, very likely from the Ukraine, took out enough of the bridge to stop the traffic back and forth. And those bridges are vital to the Russians. And so that's a big blow for them. Thursday the 20th of July 2023. Putin visits Syrian President Assad. And you will be surprised to see the suggestion of the President Assad to Putin. So let's go ahead and watch that.
Bashar al-Assad had quite a time in Moscow yesterday meeting with Vladimir Putin. Number one, he pledged Syria's support for Russia's war in Ukraine, much like Iran has done. Russia, as we've been telling you here in the newscast, folks, continues to draw closer to Iran and Syria, not to mention China, more on that in a minute. But to hear Assad verbalize this, he told Putin that he actually wants more Russian troops and more Russian military bases in his country in Syria. Not only that, he said, we would like you to have a presence in our country permanently. So the leader of what was once, I guess, a sovereign nation, Syria, no longer in the wake of the civil war where everyone has a piece of the pie, Iran, Russia, Turkey's there as well. Assad is telling Russia, we don't want you to leave. We want you to have even more of a presence here. And as a matter of fact, we want you to stay here for good. Now, Assad, there's been some reports over the years, a few things here. Some reports that he is disenchanted with the Iranian presence. He'd like Iran to go, and Iran says, yeah, right, we're not going anywhere. Secondly, over the years, some have said, and I've heard this firsthand in talking to some so-called experts, both in the U.S. and in the Middle East, who have told me, look, Russia is only in Syria for a short time.
We're coming to Friday, the 21st of July. Hezbollah-affiliated cleric Sheikh Sadiq al-Nabusli stated that a war with Israel could deliver Lebanon from its ongoing political and economic crisis. So they all are pushing for that war. Hezbollah against Israel, Lebanon would profit from it, so they think, not realizing that a war would be so destructive. I don't know how much would be left of Lebanon after that war. Saturday, the 22nd of July. In 2023, global crops have been devastated by plague after plague. Farmers in the US and elsewhere have had to deal with seemingly endless drought, unprecedented heat, and nightmarish flooding and horrifying outbreaks of disease. A swarm of grasshoppers that was so enormous that it was actually spotted by weather radar systems descended upon Thule in Utah. The United Nations is telling us that 2.4 billion people do not have enough food to eat right now. And with the situation with Russia and the Ukraine and no more ships going through to feed the people in Africa, the starvation will rise up enormously, exponentially for this coming year. Sunday the 23rd of July. Moscow hit by 10 drones, but the Ukraine denies it. Putin keeps destroying buildings in the Ukraine. The war continues, it intensifies. Ukraine is doing something here but denies it. And well, let's go ahead and watch the video.
Now to Ukraine, where Russian drones targeted the capital Kyiv for a third straight night. Ukrainian officials say one person was killed in the latest attacks and claim their forces shot down nearly all the Russian missiles. Meanwhile, officials in Moscow report minor damages and injuries from a drone attack that Russia blames on Ukraine. Deborah Patter is in Ukraine, has the latest on the air attacks.
The wave of Russian strikes in daylight and at nighttime has been relentless. Pre-dawn explosions once again in Kyiv, when a swarm of exploding drones was taken down by Ukraine's air defense network. The third attack in just 24 hours. Yesterday morning, children were sent screaming in terror, and residents scrambled into underground shelters as a barrage of Russian missiles bore down on the capital. President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed the success of the US-made Patriot air defense system. When Patriots are in Ukrainian hands, he said, there is a 100% interception rate of any Russian missile. But as each side in this conflict tries to gain the upper hand ahead of a looming counter-offensive, even Moscow is starting to feel the direct effects of this war. According to Russian media, more than 10 drones targeted the capital today, with around 300 people evacuated from a high-rise building after it was damaged in the attack.
Tuesday the 25th of July, Israeli unrest over the power of the Israeli Supreme Court. The structure of the Supreme Court is such that all the power is with the Supreme Court and who will be the next Supreme Leader. And so Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, tried to change that, but there's so much opposition that half of Israel is against it and half of Israel is for it. Go ahead and watch and see what's happening.
Turning overseas now, and the incredible scenes playing out across Israel tonight. Mass protests sweeping across the country just hours before a crucial vote that could transform Israel's judiciary. Tens of thousands taking to the streets to protest the controversial overhaul. Critics say it's a threat to democracy that will ruin the country's checks and balances. And on the eve of that vote, a new health scare for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Here's ABC's Inez de la Cuatara.
Tonight, just hours before a crucial vote to overhaul Israel's judiciary and which could transform the country's democracy, these extraordinary scenes playing out. Tens of thousands taking to the streets in dueling protests. A sea of blue and white Israeli flags, protesters against the judicial overhaul, completing a 5-day trek from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
It's been a long journey, and we're going to stay here as long as we need to defend our democracy.
These pro-government rallies, underscoring the deep divide in Israel.
I am 100% in favor of this judicial reform. I think my country needs it. I think we absolutely need to go through with it.
Anti-government protesters forming a human chain from Jerusalem's Western Wall to the Knesset, where the vote will take place. Hundreds more camping outside. Inside the Knesset, a marathon debate expected to last 26 hours, all centering around a plan to limit the Supreme Court's judicial power. Critics arguing it would weaken the court's ability to overrule the right-wing coalition, but the government claiming the court is too powerful. On the eve of that vote, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hospitalized for an emergency pacemaker procedure, just 1 week after another health scare. The Prime Minister releasing this video after the surgery, saying he's doing well and vowing to be at the Knesset in time for the vote.
Wednesday, the 26th of July. Like last time, a rally designed to show support for judicial reform occurred. Tonight's rally in Tel Aviv has become a mega rally, so the uproar continues, and now both sides, back and forth, are going on the street and trying to push their point of view.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a sudden announcement on Saturday that he had to be fitted with a pacemaker overnight. In a video statement, Netanyahu said, "A week ago I was fitted with a monitoring device. That device beeped this evening and said I must receive a pacemaker and that I must do this tonight." The heart monitoring device was given to him after he was hospitalized overnight in mid-July for dehydration during a holiday to the Sea of Galilee amid a heat wave. In the video, the 73-year-old added, "I feel great, but I need to listen to my doctors." Early on Sunday, his doctors at Sheba Medical Center said, quote, "The implant went smoothly without any complications." Netanyahu had said in the video that his doctors assured him he would be discharged from the hospital by Sunday afternoon, in time for a key vote on a controversial bill to reform the judiciary. Netanyahu's statement came as protesters in Tel Aviv continued to put pressure on the government to scrap the judicial overhaul. An estimated 100,000 Israelis packed out the streets of the business hub, as many have been doing every Saturday since early this year. Tens of thousands also converged on Jerusalem, rallying outside Parliament ahead of Sunday's debate on the bill that precedes the vote. Critics say the proposed changes will open the door to abuse of power. Netanyahu's religious nationalist coalition says the bill is needed to balance out the branches of power. The bid to change the judiciary has plunged Israel into one of its worst political crises, sparking ongoing nationwide protests, denting the economy, and stirring concern among Western allies.
Let's go to Thursday, the 27th of July. President Mohamed Bazoum is being held by rebels. Their number is unknown. June Africa reported citing a military source in the region. We're talking about the country of Niger, and the president was ousted and the military man came in and take its place. That happens so often, especially in Africa, and here it's happening again. Apparently the president Mohamed Bazoum was too close to France, was a friend of France, and apparently the military did not like that. Let's go to Friday the 28th. This is awful. Judgment is very near. Greenville, South Carolina. Far-left abortion activists who escort women to clinics to get abortions hold a sign with a recipe including dead fetuses. Can you imagine that? They call it a fetus cider, and they have yogurt and apple and cider and honey and cinnamon, but also add fetal remains. I don't even want to go there. This is the worst I've ever seen. Saturday the 29th, Senate Democrats on Thursday blocked a measure that would have stopped the Biden administration from discriminating against Jewish-made Israeli products. The Democratic members of the Senate Commerce Committee rejected a measure from Senator Ted Cruz from Texas that would have blocked the Federal Trade Commission from penalizing products produced by Israelis living in Judea, Samaria, and the Golan Heights. And this happens just after the president from Israel, by the name of Herzog, was in the States and spoke to the House and the Senate. And yet, a few days later, they decide to block things that come from what they call the West Bank, which is really Judea and Samaria. And when Ted Cruz tried to stop that, he was overpowered, overridden by the other side, and so they're going ahead with this penalizing the products that come from that region. Sunday the 30th, a new Arizona middle school for, believe it or not, queer children opening this summer will be funded by taxpayers. The Queer Blended Learning Center, which will be launched in downtown Phoenix in August, will be funded by Arizona's education voucher. It's happening, it is coming, it is accepted even by churches. And with a big smile, he is looking forward to this special school for queer children. Unbelievable. And finally, Monday the 31st of July, an older church, a very old church, with a fake pastor. And this is what can happen. Watch what God can do.
In Spencer, Massachusetts, a preacher delivers a pro-Pride Month sermon from the pulpit. He goes as far as saying that God is a mother and we should respect her. Less than 48 hours after the sermon, the church is struck by lightning.
Stated after they are forced to watch their historic church burn and then collapse into ashes.
Tonight, it is heartbreaking for this community to lose a beloved church that's been here for centuries. Take the iconic steeple of the First Congregational Church of Spencer tumbling into a roaring fire.
In a pessimistic society with cases of blasphemous divine often, intervention is ignored or is considered to be merely coincidental. But when a 160-year-old church in America was destroyed by fire and burnt to the ground after a lightning strike, this happened a short while after its pastor publicly rejects the Bible's divine Genesis. Nobody could fail to recognize a higher power at work. The First Congregational Church of Spencer, Massachusetts, a long-standing beacon of faith with a long history dating back to 1743, was suddenly struck by a bolt of lightning which set the entire building aflame and burnt to the ground. This stunning occurrence took place in the fiery sword cutting in the middle of the day, the church's spire through the skies, transforming it into a pile of burning ruins. The tower of the church stood erect since 1863, when the ferocious revolution blaze left the witnesses speechless of shock and astonishment. According to many, this is the handwriting of God on the wall, particularly following the pastor made mockery word about the Bible.
Trying to have different kinds of things, and I am one who does not believe it was dictated by God. I think that the scripture, the Bible, is human beings trying to make sense of their experience of God.
His assertion strikes at the very core of our faith, and it is tragic to witness a shepherd of the flock questioning the divine word on which our faith is based. Denying this fact is not only an insult to Christian beliefs, but also a flagrant disregard for the abundance of evidence that supports the unquestionable truth that the Bible is not a product of mortal minds, but a divine transcript inspired by God himself.
You know, in Galatians 6 verse 7 we read, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows." That's what we're seeing. But we're also seeing a continued decay of our society. And not just ours, but Western Europe and many other places, Australia and on and on. It was predicted. We knew it was coming. We are now seeing it happening. And we realize that the rapture is closer than ever before. It will happen. It will happen soon. Be ready. Tell others. Warn them. Share the good news while there is time. Because soon it will be too late. As always, Lord bless. Thank you for watching. Until next time, which will be our next meeting, Monday, September the 4th, unless the rapture happens. Lord bless.